Hello and welcome to this video on Macbeth. Today we are going to look at Act 1, Scene 4 and we'll focus in on Macbeth's black and deep desires to kill King Duncan. Before we get into the scene, I want to go over some key vocabulary with you. So first of all, we have the word allusion, which is a reference to another text. Don't confuse this with illusion, which starts with an I. Allusion is a reference. Illusion is an image or something that's not real. As an example of an allusion in an inspector calls, the inspector predicts that the family are going to meet their downfall in fire and blood and anguish. This is a biblical allusion because he's linking this in with the apocalypse at the end of the Bible. In Jekyll and Hyde, Stevenson makes a biblical allusion as well. He refers to Hyde as having Satan's signature written on his face, so another reference to the Bible. We also need to understand the phrase divine right of kings. Now, this means that the monarch's authority comes from God. So the king or the queen, whoever is ruling, has then got absolute power that human beings cannot question, because the only person the monarch, the king or the queen has to answer to is God, not other humans. Therefore, to commit regicide or to kill the king or queen is to challenge the divine right of kings. And in doing that, a person who commits regicide is therefore not just committing murder on a human scale, but also challenging God. Our next piece of vocabulary I think we've already looked at in this series is dramatic irony. So here the audience know more than the characters on stage. For example, we know Macbeth is considering the horrid image of committing regicide. He's planning to kill King Duncan. Obviously, Duncan doesn't know this. Okay, pause the video, jot down the definitions of those words, and then start the video again when you are ready. Right, here's the answers. An allusion is a reference to another text. The divine right of kings means that the monarch's authority comes directly from God. Regicide is killing the king, and the queen as well. Dramatic irony is when the audience knows more than the characters. Okay, so we're ready to get going. Act 1, Scene 4 opens in a room in the palace. There's a flourish, which means that there'll be the sound of trumpets announcing the arrival of the king. Now, this setting is really important because in previous scenes we've been on the heath with the witches. It's been wild, it's been uncontrollable, it's been outside of human civilization. There's been a real sense of supernatural power and of rules being broken there. Now we've returned to the place of authority, the place of kingship, where there's order and King Duncan is in charge of what's going to happen. And here Shakespeare really asserts Duncan's authority. So we have the flourish of trumpets. Duncan, Malcolm, Donalbain, Lennox and the attendants come in on stage. Malcolm and Donalbain, we remember, are the king's sons. Lennox is a Thane, so one of the earls or the leaders of the country, and the attendants will be the servants. So Duncan starts off by saying, "Is execution done on Cawdor? Are not those in commission yet returned?" So remember in Act 1, Scene 2, we discovered that the Thane of Cawdor had betrayed King Duncan. Duncan ordered his execution and that his title would be given to Macbeth. And in Act 1, Scene 3, the Thanes of Ross and Angus meet Macbeth and they say to him, "Hey, you're the new Thane of Cawdor," and Macbeth is really taken aback by this news. So Malcolm replies to Duncan here, "My liege, they are not yet come back, but I have spoke with one that saw him die, who did report that very frankly he confessed his treasons, implored your highness's pardon, and set forth a deep repentance. Nothing in his life became him like the leaving it. He died as one that had been studied in his death, to throw away the dearest thing he owed as 'twere a careless trifle." So here Malcolm reports that yes, the Thane of Cawdor has been executed, and indeed he confessed his treason, his betrayal of Duncan, and he repented, so he was deeply, deeply sorry for that betrayal. Now here we have the king's authority being reinstated. It was challenged by the Thane of Cawdor's rebellion, and now that that's over and that the Thane of Cawdor was truly sorry for what he did, King Duncan is back in charge. So here Shakespeare is really asserting the rightful power of the king. Remember that phrase, divine right of kings. And then Duncan says something that's incredibly interesting. He realizes that there's no art to find the mind's construction in the face. Now, the mind's construction is how someone's mind is built, how somebody thinks. And Duncan says there's no way to look at someone's face and to see what's going on in their mind. I mean, we all know this. We all put on a show, don't we, sometimes? Students do it quite often when a teacher says, "Where's your homework?" and the student says, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I forgot." When in reality, in their head, they're thinking, "I chose not to do that." Or we might be in a relationship with someone and we might be trying to cover something up, and in our head we're thinking something totally different. So we know that this is true, and Duncan realizes it. He understands that people put on a show, they put on a facade. And then he continues and he says, "He," so the Thane of Cawdor, "was a gentleman on whom I built an absolute trust." So Duncan is really gutted, he's really dismayed that he trusted the Thane of Cawdor so much, and actually the Thane of Cawdor betrayed him. So here we get a real sense that Duncan is onto the truth, that he shouldn't trust people too easily, he should be a bit more sceptical and ask a few more questions. Great, except enter Macbeth. So the original Thane of Cawdor has betrayed Duncan. Duncan realises that the Thane of Cawdor put a facade on. He realises that he shouldn't trust people too easily. And then Macbeth, the new Thane of Cawdor, walks on stage and Duncan turns to him and says, "Oh, worthiest cousin." Like the same thing is happening all over again. Duncan is putting his trust in the new Thane of Cawdor. He's calling him worthy, someone who's honourable and noble. He's reasserting the fact that Macbeth is his cousin, so he's confirming that family link with Macbeth. So this is a point of real dramatic irony, because we as the audience know that Macbeth is already thinking about the horrid image of killing the person that he's speaking to, of killing his cousin Duncan. Anyway, Duncan continues, "The sin of my ingratitude even now was heavy on me. Thou art so far before the swiftest wing of recompense is slow to overtake thee. Would thou hadst less deserved, that the proportion both of thanks and payment might have been mine. Only I have left to say, more is thy due, than more than all can pay." Quite a convoluted speech there. The important thing is the word thanks. So Duncan is thanking Macbeth. And Macbeth says, "The service and the loyalty I owe in doing it pays itself. Your Highness's part is to receive our duties, and our duties are to your throne and states, children and servants, which do but what they should, by doing everything safe towards your love and honour." So here Macbeth is reasserting the divine right of kings, that Duncan has complete authority and he owes him absolute and total loyalty. I mean, the dramatic irony here is intense. Duncan then continues, "Welcome hither, I have begun to plant thee and will labour to make thee full of growing. Noble Banquo, thou hast no let deserve, nor must be known no less than have done so. Let me enfold thee and hold thee to my heart." And Banquo replies, "There if I grow, the harvest is your own." Notice the motif of growing, of planting. Duncan here is the gardener, and he's planted Macbeth and Banquo as seeds who are now growing and flourishing, and they're going to bear fruit. The image here is of Duncan as a leader and Macbeth and Banquo as his followers. There's a biblical allusion going on here as well. In the Bible, we see God as being a gardener or a farmer who plants the seeds who are his followers on earth. Now, I've gathered this together in a table just to make it a little bit easier to understand. This image of growing is an image that we see throughout the play of ideas that are really natural. So Duncan says, "I have begun to plant thee." That's a natural image. It's to do with nature. The divine right of kings in Shakespeare's time was also seen as being the natural way of things. It was natural for the king to have authority because that was given by God. And it's natural for the servants or the subjects to have loyalty to the king. So Macbeth says, "The service and loyalty I owe." But on the flip side of this, throughout the play, we have a motif of unnaturalness. And we've seen this in particular with the witches. The witches are on the heath. It's wild, it's barren, it's a landscape outside of civilization. It's there that they concoct their potions and they do their magic spells. They speak in trochaic tetrameter, which is a rhythm that's the opposite to the heartbeat. So instead of going da-dum, 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 like the heartbeat would do, it goes dum, da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. So there's something really unsettling about the way the witches speak. If you think of the quotation, fair is foul and foul is fair, that doesn't follow the heartbeat rhythm. The witches are women, but they have beards. At the time that Shakespeare was writing, this would have been connected with unnaturalness, and they're also the instruments of darkness, so agents of the devil. We also see Shakespeare linking the ideas of a facade and a betrayal and the horrid image of regicide with this motif of unnaturalness in the play. In terms of this particular scene, and the bit we're going to read in a second is about the Prince of Cumberland. Now, we're just going to pause over this vocabulary because it's probably new to you. So the Prince of Cumberland is the next heir to the Scottish throne. So if you think in Britain at the minute, the Prince of Wales becomes king or queen. Well, it would be the Princess of Wales, wouldn't it? But becomes the king next. So Prince William at the minute is the Prince of Wales. And when King Charles dies, Prince William will take over as the heir to the throne. However, at this time in Scottish history, the Prince of Cumberland, the next king, does not have to be the king's oldest son. So Scotland followed a tradition of what's called tanistry, so the successor is chosen by the king, which means this is a really crucial point in the play because Duncan could choose Macbeth. And Macbeth, I think, is probably hoping for this. In some productions, when Duncan says in this scene, I'm about to choose the Prince of Cumberland, and it's going to be, we have this X Factor moment where everyone waits. Some productions, Macbeth steps forward as if he's about to receive this honour, and then Duncan turns to Malcolm and says, it's going to be you. Okay, so it's a moment of great tension in the play when Duncan might choose Macbeth to be the next heir to the Scottish throne. We also need to know the word soliloquy for this section of the scene. So this is where the character speaks their thoughts aloud. The others do not hear them. Okay, so let's continue reading. So Duncan says, my plenteous joys, wanton in fullness, seek to hide themselves in drops of sorrow. Sons, kinsmen, thanes, and you whose places are the nearest, know we will establish our estate upon our eldest, Malcolm, whom we name hereafter the Prince of Cumberland, which honour must not unaccompanied invest him only, but signs of nobleness like stars shall shine on all deservers, from hence to Inverness, and bind us further to you. So here, Duncan chooses Malcolm to be the next heir to the throne, to be the Prince of Cumberland. It could have been Macbeth, because we don't follow primogeniture at this place, this time in history. It follows tanistry, which is choosing the next king. And Macbeth says, the rest is labour which is not used for you. I'll be myself the harbinger and make joyful the hearing of my wife with your approach, so humbly take my leave. So Macbeth is disappointed and he says, right, I'm going to leave, I'm going to go on ahead. He wants a bit of time on his own, basically. And Duncan calls him my worthy Cawdor. And that is such a knife into Macbeth's back at this point. Malcolm is the Prince of Cumberland, even though he's not great in battle, even though he's young and a bit of a weak leader. And Macbeth is the Thane of Cawdor, determined forever to be a follower, a servant, a subject, and never the King of Scotland. And of course, every time we hear the term Thane of Cawdor in the play, we think about that original Thane of Cawdor who betrayed the king and was a traitor. So Macbeth now speaks in a soliloquy, so no one else on the stage can hear him. And he says, the Prince of Cumberland, that is a step on which I must fall down or else overleap. But in my way it lies. He's really annoyed that he doesn't have this role of the Prince of Cumberland. And then he says, stars, hide your fires, let not light see my black and deep desires. The eye wink at the hand, yet let that be which the eye fears when it is done to see. And he exits. That bit that I've highlighted in yellow is a really good quotation to learn if you're learning your quotations off by heart for the exam. He wants the stars, so stars are a ubiquitous symbol of hope. He wants the stars to go dark so that no one can see him. He wants to be plunged into blackness. And if light and stars symbolize hope, blackness symbolizes evil and despair. And then he says, let not light see my black and deep desires. So this is the horrid image of regicide that Macbeth has in his head now, that desire to kill the king, his cousin, and challenge the divine right of kings, and therefore challenge God as well. And Duncan, totally unaware of all of this, says, true worthy Banquo, he is full so valiant, and in his commendations I am fed. It is a banquet to me. Let's after him whose care is gone before to bid us welcome. It is a peerless kinsman. So Duncan says, honestly, the dramatic irony in this scene is ridiculous. Duncan says that Macbeth is peerless, he's perfect, he's his kinsman, so he's his cousin. So we've just heard Macbeth talking about his black and deep desires. He wants to murder Duncan because he's named Malcolm as the Prince of Cumberland and not Macbeth. And then Duncan turns to Banquo and says, look how perfect Macbeth is. What a great guy. And then there's a flourish. So this scene has a circular structure. We started with the flourish of trumpets, announcing Duncan as the king coming onto stage. The trumpet symbolises authority. And now we have that flourish again, and he exits. Okay, there's loads of stuff there. I want you to check that you've got the key vocabulary. So pause the video, write down your definitions for these words again, and then start the video again when you're ready. Okay, so allusion is a reference to another text. Divine right of kings, the monarch has authority from God. Regicide, killing the monarch, the king or queen. Dramatic irony is where the audience know more than the characters. The Prince of Cumberland is the next heir to the Scottish throne, and soliloquy is when the character speaks but no one else on stage hears them. What I want you to do now then is use these 6 words to write a summary of the scene, okay, just so you can process the ideas that we've talked about. So I'm going to end the video, write up your summary, use all of those words, and good luck.